I'm actually standing up for this.
Are you?
Yeah.
Got a few people in now, up to 10.
Cool. Hey everyone, we'll just give a couple of minutes and let the room get full. But get yourself comfortable, grab a cup of tea, grab a seat. We'll start in about 2 minutes.
All right, Frank, it's holding pretty steady, so you might be able to get kicked off.
Cool, let's get started. Welcome everyone. My name is Frank. I've got my colleague Eric here in the call as well. Just making sure that everyone is here for our webinar on virtual education in the COVID era. Just making sure that you're all in the right room. Welcome to Academy XI. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land. In my case, it's the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, present, past, and emerging. Again, welcome to Academy XI. We'd love to have you here in this virtual space. I will just, we've got a bit of an agenda following through this, but just before we start, I just want to talk a little bit about house rules and code of conduct. So house rules, as you can see, all of your mics are on mute. This is so we can secure a smooth run of the webinar. But if you do have any questions, we'll allocate some time at the end of the presentation. At the bottom of your screen, you can see a Q&A button. Feel free to put any questions that you might have for us, and we'll address them at the end. And if you're having any tech issues, any feedback or so on, pop it in the chat, and we'll also try to address it as much as we can during the webinar. In terms of our code of conduct, just to remind you that this is a safe space for everyone to learn and to grow. We welcome everyone's voices and opinions, but just be mindful of everyone else's experience while we're sharing this virtual space. I'm sure that we're all respectful people and we'll have a great time, but just to remind you that we don't tolerate any sort of harassment, discrimination against gender, race, religion, orientation, of anything of that matter. So please just uphold our morals and values in the same pride that we do. So let's get started. Cool. So as I was saying, my name is Frank Guzman. I'm head of learning and student experience here at Academy XI. I've been in the organization for almost 4 years now, since the very start. And it's been my pleasure over the past 4 years to see this community grow and transform from back in the days when we were running around with a suitcase full of Post-its and Sharpies, putting up classrooms everywhere in Melbourne, to now an online community of over 20,000 people across Australia. So I'm really, really happy to talk a little bit about that story, in particular about how we've transitioned over the past 3 months or so.
And hello, everyone. My name is Eric Lutley. I'm head of partnerships at Academy XI, which we say could mean basically anything as a job role title. What it does mean is that I organize team training with our corporate and government nonprofit partners across our discipline areas.
Cool. So a bit of agenda for today, so you know what you're signing up for. We'll talk a little bit about who we are, who Academy XI is. We'll talk about the impacts of COVID-19. We'll also dive a little bit deeper on the challenges and the lessons we've learned. And as I was mentioning earlier, we'll allocate some time for Q&A. So let's get started. So we believe that we can change the world. We believe that by giving you access to not just tools and theory, but rather a mindset shift on how to approach problem solving, we create what we call our tribe of future change makers. We try to embed purpose in everything that we do, whether that's for individual trainers or corporates. We'd like to bring that to life. So thank you for joining us in achieving our vision. But more specifically, we do that with short, skill-specific and practical courses in the areas of design, innovation, and technology, for both for individuals and for organizations. If anything, I guess the two people that you've got here, myself, I look after most of our individual sort of B2C courses, if you'd like to call it, vocational training, and Eric looks after our organizations and partnerships. But saying to change the world is a huge statement, and it's one that we don't take lightly. So we see XI way beyond the academy, more of an ecosystem, and that ecosystem is formed by 4 different pillars. Both equally, all 4 equally important, but some of them more developed than others. So our academy is our vocational training. So all of our courses from 1 day to 10-week, part-time, full-time, online and remote, and campus-based as well. We also have XI Think, which is our thought leadership events, like the one that you're attending just now, where we try to spark conversations amongst the industry and see how we can use our skills to create positive impact in society. XI Act is our social enterprise, where we bring this to the ones that need it the most, such as non-for-profits, remote areas in Australia, and really try to make an impact with our work. And since we're all about the future, we also want to educate the ones who are responsible for it. And GenXI is our early education branch, where we do workshops around creative problem solving, entrepreneurship, and technology for kids between the ages of 8 to 16 years old. We do that by partnering with different organizations, high schools, but also corporates, like kind of like a bring your kid to work kind of day, but rather than them just running around in the office, we get to train and we get them to learn a little bit about what mom and dad do. I guess just to put it in simple words, it's probably really easy for kids to identify what their parents do if your mom's a doctor and your dad's a teacher. But if your mom's a UX researcher and your dad's a product owner or a head of innovation, a bit harder to understand that. So hopefully with workshops like this, we can educate the future generations about STEM and about careers in technology. If you do want to know more about who we are and what we do, feel free to tap either Eric or myself on the shoulder, tap us on LinkedIn, send us an email. We're always happy for a chat. But let's get to it. Let's get to what we're actually here to discuss. So I wanted to start with saying that obviously I think it's no surprise for anyone here that the world looked very differently 3 months ago. Back in late Feb and early March, I was traveling to Sydney to look after our both campuses on almost a weekly basis. And for us particularly, I guess it's sharing our story and our learnings. We had 17 courses across disciplines such as user experience design, digital marketing, product management, data analytics, VR and AR design, service design, UI, graphic design, and so on. So we had 17 courses across online in Sydney and Melbourne. All of those courses had about 26 clients embedded in them. We were across 2 cities. We had a team of 36 internal staff members that work in the back end, but also 30 instructors that work on front of the stage delivering our courses. Dozens of corporate clients on the pipeline, but luckily we also had a growing online product team and course portfolio. I think we were very lucky that Academy XI, we've been building our online capacity for the past 2 years now. And that means building different courses, I guess introducing an online product team that works with subject matter experts and learning designers to create, I guess, meaningful experiences online. This was kind of what we've been working on for the past 2 years, and this is where we were in late Feb, early March. And then this happened, as we all know. It sort of started brewing since January when we started seeing travel bans and restrictions coming to Australia, and then when we started seeing cases popping all over the world. But all of a sudden, it was actually in a matter of days, I guess, in a matter of hours, is where Australia really, I guess, started taking measurements on that. And we just wanted to expand a little bit more on some of the things that we had to address, that we learned, and how we changed as well. So hopefully it's a bit of a, it provides some insights and learnings for those who are tuning in with us today. We wanted to particularly divide this part of the presentation in 2 sides. So one, talk about the systems that we used, but also what it meant for our customers. So I'm going to hand it over to Eric to talk about our systems and digital platforms.
Great, thank you, Frank. So yeah, I mean, as Frank was saying, when we first sort of all of this happened, we'd already been going down the digital path with our training for some time, and we had a number of tools that we already used, thankfully, to help deliver that training. And they're quite different, different kind of mediums through which we were providing training online. But obviously, when COVID happened, that all was sped up, and we were suddenly relying on those tools to provide 100% of our training, whereas beforehand it had been about maybe 40-60 or 50-50, something like that. So I'll take you through some of those tools, how we used them before, and then sort of how we ended up leaning on them more. Take you through that, and then after that, as Frank mentioned, he'll kind of elaborate on, you know, using those tools, what did that actually mean to the students who were, you know, in the situation of having to go from a face-to-face class that they were attending every day full-time with other students that they met and worked on projects with, to suddenly being at home in front of a computer all the time, which is not, you know, what they signed up for. So there is a big piece there. So Frank will go into that, but I will focus on the tools. So I guess just to start off with, so these kind of divide out into two different types of tools. So the four that you see on the left, Zoom, Slack, Google Docs, and Miroboard kind of all work as a package with us. And then the two LMSs on the right-hand side, which are learning management systems, for anyone who's sort of not up in that space, which I wasn't too much before I started XI about a year ago. That's sort of a different space. So I'll kind of describe what that means and how we use them, and upsides and downsides as well. So I'll start with an example of a corporate training session that we ran just after COVID happened, and then I'll move into our B2C courses and explain how we did that. So as mentioned, I run corporate training here. So I had a corporate, actually a government client, customer service NSW, that we were planning to do a one-day human-centered design intro course for audit and risk staff, really, you know, sexy profession. I'm wanting to bring HCD in, just a mindset shift piece. And so it was definitely intended to be a face-to-face course. When COVID happened, they decided that we would still move forward, and our instructor, thankfully, is quite proficient at delivering virtual training sessions. So she kind of put up her hand and said, I can do this. And they said yes, and so we moved forward with it. So the way that we use those four tools, which is what we use for this corporate session, Zoom, Slack, Google Docs, and Miroboard. So Zoom, as you know, we're on right now, so there's not too much to explain to do there. That's where the theory is delivered. We have Slack is for kind of offline comms between participants. So what we did with that session, and something that we do often for all of you education designers out there, for corporate anyways, we will often break a one-day session into two halves, split up by about 2 weeks. So the first half day is theory-based in Zoom with the instructor, introducing the Slack channel. Also, and Google Docs is used to deliver the like the slide deck, basically, and to put resources in that can be accessed later. Those three are probably familiar to you. And then Miroboard is also introduced during that first half day. It's actually a UX tool, so user experience design tool that we've all at XI been familiar with for a number of years, but it's actually, I think they're probably loving life, to be honest, right now, because it's really blown up in this sort of era, because it's a great collaboration tool. So that's where all of our project work between participants gets done. You can upload documents there and link them together. It's all visual in real time. It's pretty cool if you have a look at it. We don't work or own any part of Miroboard, but it is pretty cool. There's a few other resources that do something similar, like Mural, I believe. So what we did for that is we'd have the half-day session, theory, introduce Slack, Google Docs, and Miroboard. Then we set a project for them to work on. They interact in their project teams through Slack. They have the Google Docs slide decks there, and then they have a group collaboration option in Miroboard. They work on the project for the 2-week period, And then the last half-day session ends up being a presentation time, really. So everyone's worked on their project, they're presenting their findings. And then we have kind of a Q&A retrospective looking back over, what went well, what didn't go well. What happened with customer service NSW is that they were quite new to the concept of virtual, anything really, to be honest. And so what we did, which has been useful for B2C as well, is we actually did kind of an intro session on some of these digital tools before the first session, because trying to teach someone a digital format and theory at the same time, it's too much to take in. So that would be a strong recommendation, is do a session before, just on the tools in a non-pressure environment. And then, at the end, there was a really good sort of exchange of ideas, and it went really well. So that's a pretty standard format we'll use for corporate training. On the B2C side of things, so when COVID came in, we were in the very unique position, and Frank led this, of having to transfer, like 15 or something courses in the blink of an eye, basically from face-to-face to online. So again, we use more or less the same toolkit for a lot of those face-to-face, for most of those face-to-face courses. So that was, again, Zoom, Slack, Google Docs, and Miroboard. Although the format was much longer, like these are either like part-time 10-week courses or full-time 10-week courses, it's actually a very similar sort of format that was used, and certainly the same tools as well. So that's one suite that we use to deliver to training. The second one, which I don't use as much in the corporate space, but is used heavily in B2C, are the learning management systems. So for anyone who's kind of not familiar with this term, it's an online platform that has content populated in it in its simplest form. That's really what it is. It's a resource. So for instance, we have what we call foundations courses that are built in YZ, which is the simpler of our two LMSs. And they're self-paced, so they've got a bunch of modules with theory that comes in the form of videos, slide decks, activities, and learning checks. And people go through those at their own pace. They can take a week, they can take a month. They don't interact with a live instructor, although I've done them and it feels like you know them because you're listening to the same person deliver the whole course. It's kind of weird, actually, in a good way. And then they just finish off. And so that's our simpler LMS, YZ, how we did that. So I guess just to clarify, we had those courses running before COVID, which was great for us, put us in a kind of a unique position. And so those just kind of continued apace, didn't really change much, but we were also able to leverage them YZ a little bit more with building out specific courses to run in that online format. So that's YZ. And then the sort of Cadillac of LMSs, well, the way we use it anyway, is called Novoed. I just saw a question come through. Can you share screenshots? We'll send those out with an email afterwards with some other information resources that'll come tomorrow. So good question. So Novoed, we had just onboarded a little bit before the session. Before COVID came in. It's sort of running our 10-week full-time equivalent courses online. So some of you may know who come from the education space, the trickiest thing with online learning is engagement. The drop-off rates of students with online learning can be massive. So everything we do is kind of geared to get around that and over it. Novoed is really good for that because it has social engagement. It basically has, like, the easiest way to describe it is Facebook built into the platform. So people are uploading their projects, they're commenting on each other's projects, the mentor is interacting with them in real time. It's super cool. And so all of that was something that we were able to continue in COVID. And I mean, to be honest, those courses blew up for us in a good way because people had time on their hands and it was a good chance to upskill. And we had this product that was built for online. It wasn't, to be honest, I've seen a lot of companies that were like, oh, in the last 6 weeks, we've become digital experts. And it's like, okay, no, it's great that you went on that journey, and we did too. And we're going to, Frank's going to provide some sort of upsides and downsides and some challenges and hurdles that we had. But we were in a situation where we've been doing this for a while. And and this was the suite that we used to do it. So some of those may be familiar to you, most are. Some may be useful. Hopefully you can take those away. And if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to ask. So now I'll switch over to Frank again to talk about the human side of all of that.
Sorry, yeah, just to jump on that, Novoed, actually, it's a really great tool. One of the best sort of assets that we've managed to use is that it's got a gamification element to it, which means is that by unlocking modules, you earn points. By reviewing others' peers' assignments, you earn more points. By attending a video call, you earn extra points. And the system itself, and I guess that's up to us on how we map that student experience, which I'll get into in a second. But we were able to sort of I guess, direct the platform on when and how did we want to engage with our students. How do we want to build online engagement through games, through activities, through peer-to-peer learning. But just going back a little bit, I wanted to take a moment to talk about our action plan and response. As Eric was mentioning, so back in, I don't know, that would have been like early March, when this started happening, we had to respond pretty quickly. We knew that, I guess we identified that COVID was a threat to our campus-based courses. And I wanted to run you through some of the steps that we took. So before we did anything, we consulted with our instructors. The reality is that we can dictate, I guess we can say we're going to move to here and there, but the reality is that it is not Eric nor me nor the other 36 staff members that work at Academy XI that actually provide the learning. It's our instructors. So we wanted to include them in the decision process. Luckily, because we teach tech and digital skills, we were in a very lucky position that all of our instructors was actually quite versed in remote learning tools, because either they work in a remote learning team or they're already teaching these skills. So before we even communicated anything to our students, we went to our instructors first and said, this is a real threat. We're considering we might need to move online in the near future. How do you feel about that? What would work? What wouldn't? What are the tools that you're going to need? How are we going to make this transition? Before we say anything, are you ready? Or how can I help you get ready for this? Then on the first week, this was around mid-March, when restrictions weren't mandatory and social distancing wasn't mandatory, because we were in the CBD, we acknowledged that coming into class was actually quite a threat. Taking public transport, by this time, a lot of our students were already working from home, so hence it didn't make sense for them to come to the CBD after work and drive there or take public transport. So we became a bit more flexible. We understood that some people weren't comfortable with taking public transport, and some people still wanted to come into class. So for that 1 week, we gave students the flexibility to either come in and attend the class on campus with social distancing, or to dial in remotely. It was actually in a matter of days that we started to see this transition. On the first day, we probably had about 85% of our students in the class. By the Friday of that same week, we probably had 25, unfortunately. And it just, every day it sort of started, I guess, panic started to build. But actually people started realizing the actual threat of this. And it was almost serendipitous that actually on that Friday, we made the decision to move fully remotely online. This was prior to social distancing rules in both New South Wales or Victoria, but we made that decision with putting the health of our students and staff members at first, and we communicated these changes. So what we did is that we actually took the time to, on that Friday, before we moved to online, we stayed back and we actually communicated to each and every single class, saying the decisions that we've made, the reasoning why, and how this was going to be. So we onboarded everyone on the tools. We communicated the time and place where this was going to take. And we also made sure that everyone, like, not only we did it, we said it, I guess, face to face, but then we reiterated on Slack channels and on email. And then once we've done that, we actually took a moment, sort of stepped back and analyzed and understood, why do people sign up for these courses? The reality is that there were certainly challenges around and hesitations around moving to online. As I said, we've always had an online course, and one of our biggest I guess one of the biggest challenges that we faced is that our students actually make a conscious decision if they want to study online or campus-based, I guess, or used to. And so for our campus-based students, that meant that these students had actually made a conscious decision of not to study online because at the time it was their preference, and unfortunately that wasn't an option anymore. So if we had to change the delivery of the courses, how did we make sure that whatever success may look like for them and the reason why they signed up for was still there and was still met? So even despite changing the delivery, because there was nothing we could do about it now that it was I guess put in by the government, we understood that the course at the end is a means to an end, whether that is to transition into a new career, getting a promotion, upskilling your whole team, participating in a new project, taking on board a new challenge at work. We really, I guess, by being a small organization, a fairly small organization, we had the luxury of sitting down with our students and really understanding what the success looked like for you and how can we make sure that we to an extent tailor that experience so your learning outcomes and experience is not jeopardized by COVID-19. So once we did that, we acted pretty nimble and agile. We understood that the course is a means to an end, and how can we I guess either promise more as a compensation for moving online, but at the same time making sure that our instructors were fully equipped to deliver the content and again without jeopardizing the outcomes. And that, I think, that was actually like one of our I guess biggest efforts, and it paid off, because what we did after that, so after a week or two of delivering now fully remotely online, then we gathered feedback to see if things were working or not. We understood that even though we were quite versed in the online space, again, these students had originally signed up for a face-to-face course, and unfortunately had to be moved to a remote learning. So we gathered feedback to see what was working, what wasn't, what did they needed more of, what did we need to stop doing, continue doing, and so on. And I know everyone hates surveys and questionnaires, but we really made sure that everyone, or at least the majority of our students, were filling in these surveys because we really wanted to know if we were meeting the expectations or not. Once we did that, we took some time to analyze that feedback and contact those students who were having a bit more trouble, and it was for I guess a myriad of different reasons. It might be that you don't have the proper learning space in your house. It might be that you live in a shared house or in a house with young children, and it was actually coming to campus that was sort of your escape and dedicate space for learning. It might have been that your connection wasn't great, or that you needed more time with your mentor or with your instructor, and we made sure that we accommodated for that. But that only came from, again, consulting, implementing, and then sort of reiterating, gathering feedback, and making sure that we were keeping our promise. And then what we did from then on, and we keep on doing, is that we reimagine what our online experience looks like. Again, I mentioned earlier in the day in my introduction that I take care of the student experience and learning experience here at Academy XI. So I guess it's my job to constantly keep on thinking, how can we make this better? How can we keep our students engaged and meet our promise? So with tools, say like Novoed, we actually learned that that human connection was probably the most latent sort of need for our students. A lot of them sign up to be part of a community, to be part of a network, and we reimagine how networking would look like in a digital space, how connecting with others would look like in a digital space, through peer-to-peer reviews, through gamification of the online platforms, through including more one-on-ones, even the small things like doing a coffee roulette where people can catch up with classmates randomly like they would on campus. Things like setting little challenges to take pictures on our classes, using Zoom and being as creative as possible, and then rewarding the class with a prize for those who won. But again, it's those little details that for us really mattered, because it meant that the realities that we couldn't control the situation. As much as we would have liked to, we couldn't go back to campus, but what we actually can control is how people respond to it, how people engage with it, and how we communicate and get them on board. So we actually wanted to sort of wrap up this part of this part of the webinar with our top 5 learnings over the past couple of months in COVID transition and on digital transformation overall. So grab a pen and paper, take a screenshot, take a picture. But this is our golden nuggets. For us, first and foremost, clear and constant communication is key. The reality is that when you're online, there's no room for questions, or you have to leave very little room for questions, because there's no chance of tapping someone in the shoulder. Oh, what was that? Or like, there's no chance of reminding someone like, hey, you should be on that class right now, or you should be doing this by now. So clear and constant communication was key for us. So the way that we do that is that every time we send a message, we do it in 3 different platforms, just so make sure that everyone gets it. In our case, Slack, email, and the learning management system. We make sure that our course calendar is almost set in stone, like a Bible, that people can follow, so they know where they're going, what they meant to be doing in each step of the way. So that's, I guess, point number 1. Lesson learned number 2 is to really involve everyone in the decision making. As I said, I could have just said, yep, we're moving online, but the reality is that I'm not the one delivering the classes. I manage a team that does. And it was really important for myself and for the team as well, to make sure that everyone was on board when making these decisions, that we took everyone into account, that we took what was the feasibility, what was the technology, did we have the tools? If not, what do we need to have those tools? Did we have the training? If not, how can we get them on board? But really making sure that we include everyone in the decision, including our students, including our customers as well. What's going to work for them? And third point is also to stay true to your vision and mission. I guess at the end, we're trying to stay positive and trying to, I guess, be in a mindset that, again, we can control what we can. In our case, is how we respond to this. How are we meeting our students and partners' goals? And that at the end, online is just another way to deliver the training. That doesn't mean it's better or worse than face-to-face. It's just different. But the promise, again, should stay the same. That idea of success, whatever that may look like for you, whether that's upskilling a whole team, or getting a promotion, or taking on a new project on board, such as digital transformation, that you keep that goal in mind. And at the end, it's probably not going to be a straight road to it. It's kind of like sailing, if you have a boat, you don't necessarily sail straight point A to B, you sort of go sideways, but it means that you're still progressing. Again, it's just a different way of delivery.
Cool. And I wrote the last 2, so I'll talk about those. I mean, I think everything that you've kind of heard from Frank here is that, keeping learners engaged and interested in the course material online. It is possible, but it's not easy. Like, I mean, it would have been nice if, everyone came on the webinar, and then we had some really simple and easy tool that just was like snap, and this is how you do online engagements for learning, and it's super easy. But it took a concerted effort by the entire team and tons of long hours, and just really just giving a crap basically about the students and listening to what they wanted and asking them not just once, but again and again, what is it that you need? What can we do for you? And then the second was really think about the experience you're trying to deliver. What is the outcome here? What do we want to be able to give to our students? And then select the digital platforms that will enable you to do that, and then populate the platform after that. So it's, it's kind of a sequential thing. Like if you try and do them out of order, I think it doesn't really work. But you just need to have your end goal in mind, and then work through that. Obviously, I talked about the digital platforms because that's kind of close to my heart. And because if you don't have the right tools, then it's very difficult to engage with the students and find out what they need in the first place. And then the content kind of is the last piece. I mean, the content is what we knew already. That was sort of the easy bit, as it were, for us, because we've been doing that for years, and it doesn't actually change that much from virtual to face to face. But yeah, I think that was big for us, is that really sort of put a roadmap in place. Don't just do a knee-jerk reaction. Like, we had to move fast, but I think the guys did a great job um, of thinking it through before we made any moves. And doing it early actually was really good, because yeah, like Frank said, we kind of some people might have thought we jumped the gun at the beginning in terms of going virtual, but it obviously worked out in the end, because we had a little bit of a head start, and it made us look sort of like we had a plan. And I mean, with students, you need to seem like, you have a plan, and you know what you're going to do. So cool. So those were our lessons learned. Now I'm starting to see a few questions pop up.
Yep, we've allocated some time for questions. I see. So how do we measure attainment? We actually, it's within our surveys, when I was talking back to the slides, that once we implemented some changes, we gathered feedback. Within our feedback, it was actually some comments and rating for our instructors. So has the instructor met expectations 1 to 10? Anything that we can do to improve your learning, or sort of dwell on your teaching, or on your teachers' experience. So we gathered feedback on them as well, and then gave them some prompts to it. I'm also seeing what didn't work. I guess we didn't necessarily test it, but we fell into the assumption that that what wasn't going to work is pretend that someone was be online Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, like they would be on a classroom. So before we even considered putting someone like in front of a screen looking at lectures from 9 to 5, we broke the content into sessions of no more than 45 minutes, followed by activities that people can do on their own time, and then get back to and I guess so deliver the lesson in 45 minutes, where kind of everyone's attention span, then have, say, another 45 to do an activity, and then come back and share that activity with everyone. We sort of broke the content into pieces, rather than pretending that it was just a copy paste of the slides or the content from campus-based to online.
Seen another question come through. Why do we have 2 LMS systems? That's a good question. So YZ is much simpler. It doesn't have that social engagement baked into it. So there's less you can do in that space. It's also much cheaper, which is why we still keep it. It's good for some things. For the full 10-week courses, it wasn't quite fitting the bill. We just decided it wasn't fit for purpose. So that's why we went out and found Novoed, which is sort of a next generation.
I think it's more, it was also around what sort of level of engagement we want from a student. Not everyone wants to be part of discussions. Not everyone wants to be part of live sessions or videos. So we use WiseEd for the short foundation courses that are self-paced, that you can do on your own time, on your phone, up to 6 months. And WiseEd is really good for that, because it just allows you to build courses very quickly and pop them in there, versus Novoed is a bit more complex. Hence, we use it for more complex courses, I guess.
And then I see another question here. How did digital help students improve their learning goals? So Frank is probably a good one to speak to this. I know that in some cases our NPS scores actually improved once we moved into online, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think actually one of our biggest learnings in that is that introverts actually respond, or tend to respond better to online learning. What this means is that there's usually, in every class, there's usually 2 or 3 people who are always putting up their hands, asking questions, and so on, and are quite extroverted and outgoing. And in a classroom space, those who are more introverted probably feel less confident about asking a question. But when it's online, we actually discovered that those people who were a bit more introverted were very comfortable with popping questions on the chat, or maybe turning off their camera yet still speaking. So it actually improved the experience for a lot of people that we weren't even considering, I guess, or that we initially didn't thought of that as an issue. It also helped, I think, it helped their learning goals in the sense that a lot of people who are in the industry right now are also having to adapt, and they're also learning the tools um, as they go, as in on the fly, during their work. But in this case, we are teaching remote collaboration skills from the get-go for those students who are graduating and are hitting the industry after this. So they might be, if anything, at an advantage because they're so used to it.
I think I might go jump back a little bit to another question. Oh, that's actually the same question, which was something that didn't work, that I can relate from the corporate space. So when we were first planning a corporate training session sort of midway through COVID, yeah, we basically didn't introduce Miro board in the right way, or we didn't give people enough time to wrap their heads around it. We sort of over assumed their level of comfort with new systems like this. Like we gave them some time to learn it, but it became pretty obvious that it wasn't going to be enough. And so we actually had to rejig our strategy for delivery, like on the actual day of the main training session, because we just didn't think that people were going to be around Miro board, the collaboration tool, enough to sort of have that be out of their heads and just focus on using it to actually learn the content that we were trying to deliver. So that was a bit of a learning opportunity, we'll say, in a politically correct way of saying we screwed up a bit. And then we were able to sort of get over it and solve it. And I mean, obviously everybody was in a situation of learning together how to deliver training in a virtual environment. I mean, one of the nice things about COVID that everyone got a lot more understanding of each other, I think, which was kind of nice. And there was like an understanding that we were all learning things together.
Even to this day, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say another mention was, yes, an hour Zoom session can be exhausting. So yeah, we definitely try and break things up.
I was just saying, even to this day, it just happened yesterday that I don't know if everyone else felt it, but there was a mandatory Zoom upgrade that happened on the 30th of May, so on Sunday, and probably no one was using Zoom on Sunday. So when we jumped on all of our courses on yesterday, Monday morning, it took like half an hour for everyone to set up because everyone had to do a mandatory update, and then the links had to get changed and so on. So even one of the things that we've learned is to actually not to put all your eggs in one basket. Hence, we use two LMSs. Hence, we have multiple Slack channels, and hence we also use other video platforms such as Whereby and Google Hangout, which are both free. And because it happened yesterday, where there was about 7 courses that jumped on Zoom calls yesterday, and 3 out of those actually just couldn't get into Zoom. So we had to pivot and say, well, let's jump on a Google Hangout, or let's jump on Whereby. Here's another link. And again, it takes understanding for everyone that as much as we can't rely on technology 100%. So having, I guess, different platforms also helps.
I see a good question from Matthew here, following up on that corporate piece. I guess one of the nice things, well, it's a bit of a double-edged sword with working with corporates, is that you've got your client contact who you've sort of co-designed the course with. In my case, so I'm usually like, good portion of my job is like sort of joined at the hip with my client, who's often a head of learning or a learning designer or a learning and development manager inside a corporate or government. Either that or actually a team lead in a discipline focused space like a UX team lead or something. So you have that client, and they can gather feedback from their team, and then they can feed it back to you, and they will, which is what I want. You obviously want to know what's working and what's not working, so you can achieve the best outcome. And I'm not just saying that, I mean, that is just really how you do good work. It is a bit of a shame, like there's been circumstances where I've got longer term clients, corporate clients, where we'll do surveys. Often the heads of learning, I'll find for like 5-day courses, the head of learning will actually do surveys using a tool called Menti is quite common. We've actually used that as well, MENTI. Pretty good for just like quick live surveys, like how did it go? How's your level? How are you feeling at the beginning of the day? How are you feeling at the end of the day? How do you feel about the content? What would you change? all stuff like that. So we'll often do that. It's a bit of a tricky ask sometimes with like if I was to say to the client, like my client contact, oh, could we do a survey of the team? Because usually there's a bit of a sort of a friendly buffer a little bit between us and them. It depends on the length of the course though. Yeah, Mentimeter, Nosh is that is the tool that we use. Yeah, we find it pretty good. I've heard other ones floated around. We're not married to that one by any means, but I've seen it used in a fair few places. And yeah, I mean, we definitely are always I'm always trying to get feedback. I mean, we're in kind of a unique position where we have a team of learning designers on staff, and I'm literally asking my corporate clients, like, what would you like to see in a course? Like we do bespoke course builds, like one-offs for clients all the time, but we're also building out sort of, productized one-day courses, for example. And I'll literally just say, hey, if you tell me a thing that you'd like, we'll build it. So if anyone is looking for a thing in the corporate space, if we get enough people that sounds like there's interest, we will build it and then offer it. So we're kind of in a cool position as a sort of an agile company that teaches agile and can sort of move and build things quickly. So yeah, there's a bunch. I've sort of gone off topic a bit there, but there's yeah, we're always trying to get as much feedback as we can so we know what to make for people.
Cool. In the, I guess, interest of time, saying that 45 minutes is about everyone's attention span. Do we have any other final questions? Feel free to pop them now. If not, we might just start wrapping it up. Eric, can you see any other questions that we haven't
it's looking good
answered?
for now. I guess just a few last things to mention. We have a webinar on next week. So I guess just for anyone here, we have fairly recently started our webinar series. We have no intention of stopping. We'll be doing them once a week or once every 2 weeks. They will either be sort of learning and education focused, like today's was, or they'll be discipline focused. So next week is discipline focused, and it's our core, which is human-centered design. But it's really human-centered design for beginners, people who haven't really touched on it a lot, specifically for the corporate and government space. So if you're a manager or a team lead, or just anyone on a team that's interested in learning more about human-centered design in a sort of business context, this is going to just unpack all the terminology you've probably heard talked about at work, but maybe were afraid to put your hand up because you didn't want to sound stupid. But it is one of those sort of new emerging things. Everyone, it's so cool. And sometimes everyone can talk complexities, but they don't just tell you actually what this stuff is. So we'll talk about the differences between customer experience design and user experience design and service design. What is customer centricity? What is design thinking? What are the differences? What are the similarities? And just kind of get you started and get some language foundations for you to take back into your workplaces. So that's next week.
Awesome. So we might just wrap it up. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Hope it didn't bore you. Hope you got something out of it. Again, if you are free, join us next week. We'll be hearing from different companies in the corporate and startup space. So hopefully we'll see you there. We'll wrap it up here, but thanks and have a lovely afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. And if you do have any questions, we'll be sending out an email tomorrow. If you have a project you want to talk about, obviously we're keen to talk about that too. So yeah, thank you again. And hopefully we'll see you next week.
Chat soon. Bye.
Bye.